UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. Today is another episode of the ongoing UFO disclosure, which we can see on all media, not just coast to coast anymore. It's Fox News, CNN, and everything else. But today I've got a very special guest on, and I'm really excited about this because I have read the book and I've talked about it. His name, of course, is John DeSouza. We'll be getting into that and so much more. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor. Collagen is often referred to as our modern-day fountain of youth, and for a good reason. Our body loses its natural ability to produce collagen as we age. This is the reason why we see a visible decline in our skin, hair, and nails. Supplementing collagen can help reverse those visible signs of aging, but we have to make sure we're getting it from the right source. This multi-collagen uses a unique blend of the top 5 critically most important types of collagen our bodies need to help bring back the youthfulness into our skin, hair, and nails. Folks, mix it into the morning drink once a day. That's what I do. And watch as your body re-energizes and rejuvenates itself from the inside out, thanks to this powerful blend of collagen. If you've ever wondered how celebrities keep their skin, hair, and nails glowing, now you know. Folks, order it today to get a bundle of benefits like VIP health and fitness coaching for life and a new downloadable report called The 14 Foods for Amazing Skin, completely free. Folks, please be sure to go to healthwithla.com. That's healthwithla.com, or click the link below for more information. So as I said, we talked about this book a couple of weeks ago, and I just want to read this again because this is the very first page of the book. And when I read this, I just went, wow, this guy gets it. Now, I obviously had never met John DeSouza, but he's on our Zoom here, so that's really cool. And we'll be getting into that with some questions. But this is what he wrote. Once the black swans arrive, once we awaken to numerous mile-long shadows cast by these ancient ships hanging over our major cities, soundless, motionless, maddening, it will be too late. And you know what, folks? He's right. John DeSouza, welcome to our weekly UFO update. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Thank you, LA. It's great to be here with you. I am so enthused to be with you and your audience, who are a very special group of people that I was really looking forward to speaking to as well. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you for coming on. I think the question that's been coming across my desk, who's this John DeSouza guy? And apparently he worked for the FBI. Is this like a modern day Fox Mulder? Can we trust him? Is he a plant? Is he giving us disinformation? And no one knows. So I'll let you set the record straight, please.
Sure. I am John DeSouza, Special Agent FBI, retired. And I am the person, I was a person who some of my cases were used way back in the 90s, early 90s, to start a new show. At that time, it was called The X-Files. And it was some of my stories were used in the first season. Some of my cases, I should say, were used in the first season. And my bosses at the FBI were very unhappy about this. They actually called in Chris Carter and myself to get to the bottom of how he got these case information things that he had, and we both had to respond to that. And he was finally able to explain to them, to their satisfaction, where he got the information. And Chris Carter at the time said he believed they were going to shut him down, shut his show down, basically. Somehow, I don't know. But they're very good at threatening people. That's kind of like what they do. So ultimately, though, I was able to prove that I did not give any information from my cases, and he was able to get them to agree that they would not bother him anymore. But after the first season, they used other stories for that show. So that was where I started. I started in the FBI. Way back then, and I was one of the youngest FBI agents to start as a special agent at that time at the age of 23, and so it was a really great adventure for me. I started I started working in the FBI. As soon as I started working in the FBI, for many reasons, I had an altercation that involved paranormal cases right at the beginning of my FBI career, and it was a case that involved many different factors. But what happened as a result of that case is that the FBI decided to punish me and give me, in addition to my regular work, which was counterterrorism cases. I worked all the big counterterrorism cases that existed throughout the country. And but in addition to that, they decided to give me paranormal cases as well. Wow. As a punishment, because they said that I liked paranormal topics, and they were right about that as well. So one of the main things that happened to me right at the beginning is they handed me a control monitor file, which figures in largely to Roswell, to the Roswell case in 1947. Was that?
Yes,
was that Roswell?
47 is that's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Well, it figured that case and the control file I put right in my book, The Extra Dimensionals. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it was a one-page memo, was the primary part of the file that was basically and I put it right in the middle of The Extra Dimensionals. And it was a one-page memo written by an FBI agent who was also a scientist and had an assignment as a scientist in some facility. And he wrote a one-page memo basically telling all the scientists that, because he was being questioned on this, asked about what is going on with alien visitors and UFOs. Because apparently in 1947, there was not just Roswell. It was a huge wave globally across the globe of UFOs that people just wanted to know what was going on with them. So that file was originally written in order to answer that question. And it was an FBI agent basically just saying that he had an informant. His informant was, and he used the term supernormal, which was an old-fashioned word for paranormal, supernatural.
Sure.
That's what it was.
Sure.
But from the context, you can gather that his informant was actually an alien visitor. Was actually an alien visitor because that informant gave him 8 conclusions that concerned alien visitors. And he basically told him these things, and then he relayed this out to the world as well. So that was one of the very first control files I was given when I went into the FBI way back in the early. Actually, it was like the late 80s, at that time. And so that was a control file that was given, and I worked that case. And basically, that case figures into Roswell because it happened at almost the same time as Roswell happened in July of 1947. That memo was written and distributed out to the world. And it is today one of the most downloaded, because it's declassified, it's one of the most downloaded government documents in the world, in the millions, because it's available free. Anybody can go on vault.fbi.gov and download it for free under UFO documents. It's an amazing document. But it actually happened because it was put out in contravention to what I call the gospel of Roswell. Roswell was put together as a gospel of alien imminency, the same way that we as believers believe that Christ is imminent at any time. The return of Christ, right, is imminent at any time.
Sure.
That is for us the doctrine of imminency. Well, Roswell was all about proving and showing that alien visitors are completely physical, that they're riding around in physical vehicles as well, that can just, like we would be, and that they can just crash by the side of the road, and a couple of alien dead bodies can just be washed up on the beach there. And it was all done to show the opposite of what this memorandum shows. Roswell was done in order to show that aliens are physical. They're riding around in physical vehicles, and they could just crash by the side of the road and end up as dead bodies by the side of the road, just like that. That is alien imminency, which they want, and they have put into our movies. They have put into all of our culture, because they want to keep that doctrine that aliens could come here at any moment, physically land on the White House lawn and start handing out the cure for cancer and many other goodies. And it could happen at any time, because that is what that doctrine, what that gospel means. So that is the reason, that is one of the reasons also why I wrote the book, The Extra Dimensionals, to prove that from the casework, from the many cases, that is not true, that aliens are not physical, that UFOs are not made of metal. They're actually made of some kind of, the genuine ones, the real ones, the real extraterrestrial UFOs are actually made of some kind of material that is akin to plasma, a shifting state of matter that they can shift at will. They can shift at will. And largely, and these are all things I got from that memo in way back whenever I received that memo, because that memo says all these things. It says that alien visitors are not physical, that they are coming here not from space, not from other planets. They are coming here from other dimensions, hence the word extra dimensional. They are coming here from other dimensions. They change their own vibration. It appears that they can become temporarily physical for short periods of time, but they cannot maintain it. They cannot maintain it. And it appears also the UFOs don't have anything inside of them. It says that in this memo. In this memo from 1947, when they didn't have a word for that, they used the word remote control, because that was the closest that they had to those UFOs being empty. But those UFOs appear to come with alien visitors to carry out little tasks for them, and sort of like the way familiars, small creatures, do for witches and sorcerers. They come with them and they do small tasks for them, important tasks though, which also figures into my first experience with UFOs and alien visitors as well.
Let me ask you something. Is it possible that it's not either or, that it's both and? I agree with you. I think some of the people have been taken on board, it's a small ship and all of a sudden they get in there and it's like, 4 football fields wide. How is it possible? Is it possible that we're looking at the scout ships, which I think the one that did crash in Roswell, that was metal? I mean, there was debris there, because we know that Jesse Marcel Jr., took that debris home. In fact, we're headed to Roswell, and we're going to be interviewing Chuck Zukowski there. Chuck found a piece of the metal years after the crash. It was definitely a piece of the metal, and of course, it was absconded. Once he took it to a lab, we don't know what happened to it. But Jesse Marcel Jr., and I interviewed him years ago, actually handled the wreckage. So is it possible that we're looking at it's sort of a both and thing? And I get it. These ships, the ships that we see, they're there, they cloak, they come in, they're a mile wide, there's no propulsion, there's no rotor wash, and yet the smaller ones seem to be physical craft. What are your thoughts there?
Myself, from the cases that I've seen and I've studied so much over the years, I believe that, for instance, the Roswell craft was a physical. Of course, it was a physical creation of some kind, and there's many other physical what we call UAPs today.
Sure.
And those have nothing to do with aliens or alien visitors. Those are physical, man-made ships. And I believe many of the others have also been physical, man-made ships that have nothing to do with alien visitors. I believe that, for instance, the Roswell craft, after all the investigations I've looked at, my final conclusion on Roswell was that the Roswell craft, for instance, was created by a combination of alien alien visitors who probably were reptilian at the time.
Okay.
And members of the cabal who put together the Roswell operation, so to speak, who put it together for the purposes of technology transfer. They wanted to get this sort of alien tech. They wanted to instill it, to create it in this Roswell craft, and they wanted to create a technology transfer to the nations as part of a larger deal that they were working on, to have what many of us call the Grijalva agreement, where we had earthly leaders who agreed to let go of many human bodies over the course of every year in exchange for advanced technology.
Sure.
And these human bodies would be given up with what? With no investigation at all by the nations. And that's exactly what's happened.
And this goes back to the whole Holloman Air Force thing, where, you know, Eisenhower goes missing for 24 hours or even longer than that, which is just absurd. Presidents don't go missing, you know, to some secret dentist way off in the desert someplace. Not buying that for a second. Many people believe that there was a quid pro quo. What I find interesting, and I've always believed in the Holloman Air Force Base, you know, legend, as it were. But I think what we're looking at, it's that same quid pro quo that we read about in the book of Enoch. And you remember, Jesus tells us it'll be like the days of Noah when he returns. And of course, when the fallen angels come down way back and before the flood, there's that quid pro quo. They give technology, albeit it's primitive technology, to mankind in exchange for the women, which is exactly what we see now. And of course, the end result of that is the breeding program. In your book, in the very first part of the book, you talk about something that happened as a child, and you were awakened. And tell us what you saw and how that impacted, really, in some ways, the rest of your life.
Yes, I was, and it's in my book, The Extra-Dimensionals, at the beginning. And I, as a child, I was about 8 years old. The first part of the experience is that I was in New York City with my parents. We were out watching, we were out at some sort of a wedding at some rented hall, and I went out into the streets with a bunch of little kids. We all went out there and we started playing Rigolevio, and it was a rough and tumble kind of game. One of the kids hit me in the stomach, and I went down on the sidewalk, and one of them yelled out, "Oh, he's hurt, he's hurt." So they all ran back a mile. They ran back like half a mile to the rented hall where it was. So it was about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. So it was very late. So I was out there in the streets of New York City, and one of the, probably not a great neighborhood, by myself. The streets were pretty much abandoned except for a few cars and a couple of buildings. Two tallest buildings I'd ever seen in my life till then. They were what we used to call, Lynn, the projects in those days. They were two very tall buildings. And so I looked up between those two buildings when I finally stood up. I stood up, I looked at because there was a big black spot in the sky. It was a starry night, but there was a big black spot in between the two buildings. And I looked up, and this black spot, it kind of looked like a cloud of ink you'd get from a squid in clear water. And I looked closer at it, and then from the bottom started coming out some spotlights from the bottom of this black cloud, this ink cloud. And some spotlights came out, and I saw that it was like an old-fashioned looking flying saucer coming out from the bottom of that cloud. And it was coming right towards me. And I was looking up at it, and then it hit me with this blue-green spotlight that just hit me and it just kind of seemed to go through me from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. And I was frozen in that spotlight. And these are things that in subsequent years I heard from many other witnesses.
Yes, I have too.
Sure. Similar patterns. But as I stood there frozen in that side, on my left came up these two teenage black girls who just kind of popped up out of nowhere. And they just kind of were looking up at this thing with their eyes wide, and they kind of screamed at me. And they said the words, "Little boy, you better run home. It looks like the world might be ending."
Wow.
And as soon as they said that, it kind of woke me out of a stupor. I took a step back out of the spotlight, And as soon as I did that, the vehicle started going back up. It started going back up. It reversed course, and it went back up into the ink cloud, and it was gone. And then the ink cloud itself also disappeared and was gone. I looked on my left, and those girls were gone. I mean, they either ran faster than anybody I've ever seen in my life, or I don't know other than that, because they were gone. So I just turned around and I ran back to the rented hall that was about half mile away. And I just went and told my parents about what happened. They kind of poo-pooed me as best they could. And then whatever that UFO found out about me, it appeared to like it, because it took, I believe now that it took that information back somewhere. And about a week later, my home was invaded by four of these. It was about 3 a.m, pretty much, because I was a clock watcher at that time, and I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m, and I had what I assumed to be four young little children came stepping into my room, and I just assumed, I didn't know where they were from, but I was frozen basically on the bed. I was frozen like a freaking plank, like a plank. Yep. And then two of the children went into my parents' bedroom, which was right off of my bedroom. And there was an open door, and you could just go right into my parents' bedroom. And two of them went in there, and two of them stayed with me. The two that stayed with me started lifting me up. And I was like a half-filled helium balloon at that point, because they very easily moved me around. And I just saw the ceiling coming closer and closer. I could not move. I could not move at all, because I really wanted to turn around and see if I was a dead body on the bed. That's what I really wanted to see. I really didn't care about the children at this point. And but then as they lifted me closer to the ceiling came closer, and then they were climbing on these two figures were climbing on nothing, basically. And they were lifting me, and then they started passing through the ceiling, and they were pushing me through, and my forehead stopped on the ceiling, just wouldn't go through. And that really seemed to confuse them.
Yeah, it would, yeah.
They were very confused. They were like engineers that just hit a spot that they couldn't get past, that didn't make any sense.
Right.
So they lowered me, and then they examined the spot on the ceiling that was stopping me. And then I could see that they were not children. They were some sort of creatures that had those wide, black, wraparound eyes, these oversized heads that were shaped differently than anything I'd ever known. And then they resumed trying to put me through the ceiling. The same result, again, the same result. It was not happening. And they did the lowering. But as they were doing this, I was able to move my neck more and more and more. And then, so like I said, I just returned. I was able to twist my neck all the way. I looked down at my bed to see if I was like a spirit or something, because that was the first thing that was coming to my mind. And I looked down at my bed. My bed was empty. And then I looked over at my parents' bed, which now had a wide open door into. I was able to look into there, and I could see two of these creatures. They were holding their hands over my parents' bed. And my parents were struggling in pools of sweat. It looked like they were struggling to wake up, and they couldn't. And they were just holding their hands over them like this. And I looked at them, and then I looked at the two that were with me, and I was very alarmed. And at that time, I looked again at the one that seemed to be the leader, that was over by my parents' bed. And he looked right at me, and that was the first time I caught a really good visual of their entire body. And he just said the words, "He's awake." And as soon as he said that, it was like a cord was cut. I just fell down into my bed like a sack of potatoes, and they were gone. They were gone. That was it.
Wow.
That was the experience that I had. And then my parents, I was planning to wake up and tell my parents and raise a ruckus. And I supernaturally I fell asleep. And when I woke up, everyone in my home was awake and trying to put their stories together, what had happened the night before. It was like a gang of criminals just trying to cover up for something that they did the next day. So that was hot and heavy, and that was a whole nother adventure. So anyway, that was my experience. That's why I am actually an experiencer, even though it was not successful. It was not successful, and I'm very glad of that. I'm very glad of that because many years later, and having spoken to many witnesses in these types of situations, some of them, like one experience that you sent me, seemed quite identical to my experience. And one of the things that I know from these experiences is, well, I'll let you ask the question because I think it's probably better for you to ask why did I think that this experience was stopped, basically, in my own case.
I mean, that's certainly a very important question because I've heard this so many times, just like you, from abductees where they're taken through the wall, through the window's closed, up to the ceiling. So some things stop them, and then of course, when the leader goes, he's awake. When you got that came telepathically, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I never saw any of them move their lips.
Right. Would you say that these were the classic grays as we know them now?
Yes, I would. That's what they look like, and that's what they seem like.
Let me ask you something. Is there a difference between when you in your book you say the extra dimensionals, and I refer to them as interdimensionals? Is that really? Are we talking about the same thing? Is it just semantics? Is it just a slight difference in verbiage, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's just a semantic difference. However, it's a definitional difference too, because the word intra means between different dimensions, and that's not really what we're talking about. It's extra dimensional because it's an extra dimension. It's a dimension other than our own that they come from.
Good point.
So that's why I feel like extra dimensionals is more appropriate to this situation. That's how I see it.
So okay, let's go back a step, and you're being taken, you're being abducted. I mean, it's a classic abduction experience. You're being floated, you're levitated off the bed, you're getting close to the ceiling, all of a sudden bump, 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 they can't get you out. Your parents are going through a whole thing, and you said, well, LA, you asked a question, and I am. So why do you think it stopped? What stopped it, in your opinion?
Well, in the many years since that time, having spoken to other witnesses who had very similar situations, sometimes identical, almost identical situations, what I found out was, as anyone who studies this area knows, is that these abductions are very often stopped with only one thing. It is by claiming the blood and authority of Jesus Christ.
There you go.
That's the only thing I have ever heard that stops these abduction experiences from going forward. They get stopped dead in their tracks. And we've seen it. We've seen it over and over again. So what I finally figured out, and this took me years to figure out, what I finally figured out was that because I actually became saved, I became born again in Jesus Christ many years later. But what I figured out was that time means nothing to Jesus. Time means nothing to God. My abduction was stopped by the fact of my belongingship, my discipleship, my belonging to Jesus Christ. Even though it didn't happen until many years later, but time means nothing to Jesus. He already knew. He already knows what belongs to him and what doesn't. So it had to be the power and authority of Jesus, even though I didn't claim it at the time, because I was just a little kid. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's the only thing that could have stopped that.
And
abduction.
and I realize, I mean, so a lot of people that's time travel. Well, that's he sees the beginning from the end and the end from the beginning.
Exactly.
So I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. You talk about the black swans arriving, and extrapolate on that, expand that. Tell us what you mean by that.
I believe that when they finally do spring this final operation on us, they will have to use very large kind of ships to create that impressive sort of factor. So they will use extremely large ships. That's why, and they will be black and ancient. They will be like black swans, things that we have never seen before. And, this is something that we have seen perpetrated in Hollywood, which is a major instrument for the cabal. And we've seen them, acclimate us to this over and over again. So that when we finally see it, we'll say, oh yeah, that's just like what we were told would happen in the movies. It's just like that. And the thing is, the reason I say once it happens, it's going to be too late. And what I mean by that is that it's going to be too late for people to educate themselves. My people perish for lack of knowledge. It's going to be too late at that moment. That's it. It's going to be game over because you won't be able to go back and learn what is extra dimensionality. Why does it matter? Why do these things want contact with us so badly? Are they really just demons? I believe it's the answer is a little more complicated than that, but it's very similar. It's very similar. I believe that the alien races are not demons. However, I believe that they are, and there are. I believe that there are both good aliens and bad aliens as well, and that the bad aliens are actually created by demons, and there are even good aliens that are actually created possibly by angels. That has been my final investigative conclusion on those things. And also, I never want to say to people, well, not the people that I speak to, that, okay, these things are just demons, because it's like slapping a religious label on a cosmic truth. And if you do that, then all of these experiencers, all of these people who believe in these areas, they would just shut down completely to anything that you're saying. And that's where I like to be. I like to be there with them, explaining these things in a way that they can understand.
And respectfully, I would disagree with you on this. I call it the coming great deception, and that's okay. It's okay if we disagree. I mean, that's what conversation's about. I look at them, and I demons in my wheelhouse are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. Nephilim are the marriage between the fallen angels and the women of earth. So, I mean, when we read in Scripture that God's going to roll up the heavens like a scroll, I believe that that's literal. So are we in some sort of a holographic universe? Are the extra dimensionals, coming from, let's say, the second heaven, which is where I think they reside? I think it's complex, John, and I don't think that anybody has, all the answers. But what I do know is that they are obsessed with creating a hybrid being, which goes into the whole Genesis narrative from Genesis 3:15, the seed of a dragon will be at war and enmity with the seed of the woman. And then you go to Daniel chapter 2, their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. So there is a breeding program. We've had too many reports, Dr. David Jacobs, hybrids walking amongst us. So we know that they're here. So I would respectfully disagree. And fortunately, in my wheelhouse, it's about deception. And, I lean on Dr. Jacques Vallée, who his book, Messengers of Deception, and J. Allen Hynek saying that these entities lie and do so habitually, who is the father of lies. But, we don't know. Nobody's got the whole answer. But right now, I'm still in the camp. But what we're looking at is an incredibly elaborate deception cooked up in Hell's Kitchen. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's not only, it is a breeding program that these malevolent alien entities have going. But if you think about all the human tissue animal tissue that they have collected over hundreds of possibly eons that they have collected. These banks of tissue and blood and all of these genetic material that they have built up over these many, many hundreds and thousands of years. These are enormous. These are enormous banks that they are going to use, not just for a breeding program, but for a creation program that they have.
I agree.
Where they're going to be creating these things that are going to be sent back to us. And we're going to get all that tissue back. It's all going to come back to us, but it's going to be formed in these very horrible forms, like what we saw the Nephilim doing. And what's the other name that they have? The creatures that were creating other races in early times. Anyway, we're going to have a repeat of that. We're going to have a repeat of that, and we're going to have creatures that we're going to see. Say again?
Chimeras, half animal, half human, half animal, and that's Greek mythos. But we see it. I mean, I've had reports come across my desk. I can't vet it. I'm not there. But I've had reports of people seeing in the Four Corners region, which is somewhere near Dulce, right? And who knows what's going on there. But they've seen and had contact with centaurs. And a centaur, of course, is body of a horse, and from the neck up or from the waist up, a body of a man or a woman. There was a family of them, allegedly. These people pulled into the driveway. There's 3 centaurs in the driveway, about 50 yards away, like in the backyard. And it's a man and a woman and a smaller child. And their eyes met. They all looked at one another, and the centaurs just bailed. They just and were gone like that. Now, what do you do with a story like that? You can't vet it. No one has a picture, but it's like the days of Noah, and we know that the seed was being mingled. The Book of Enoch tells us that they mingled the seed. They sinned against the animal kingdom. So, in my wheelhouse. The abduction phenomena, the kidnapping of people, everything, and then of course the kicker is people, and in our film, the abduction phenomena, they escape it. They break the contact by calling out to Jesus. And I realize that sounds religious, but we're not talking religion. We're talking a power that was greater than theirs. John, I'm going to give you the last word, and thanks so much for coming on the record. I don't want to give away the farm here. So, folks, I'll do the pitch before I let John close this out. It's a great book. You need to get it. You really do. It's a great book. It's well researched. You might not agree with everything. That's okay. But you want this in your library because he's got information that I believe is key to what the phenomenon is about. John, I'll give you the last word.
I want people to... Please go see my latest movie that we put out with Dr. Greer, Dr. Greer as well, called UFO Endgame. Endgame to Disclosure. Well, UFO Endgame. And that just came out recently. I'm hoping that people will see that. And the entire documentary, the entire movie is about UFO deception. Whether the UFOs are real or man-made, either way, there's deception. There's a grand deception that is coming with these UFOs, probably both the real ones that are actually extra-dimensional, extraterrestrial, and also with the ones that are the UAPs that are man-made, created by the industrial military complex. And we have out there. And so I was able to find a good area of agreement with Dr. Greer, where, there's other things he does that I do not agree with. But on this, we are of one mind. And it's very important for people to look into this and to see that. So, yeah, I do want them to see the movie UFO Endgame. And it's because it's coming up. It's coming up fast, people.
Oh, I agree. Give us your website, John, so people can go there and get the book.
Yes, my website is johntamabooks.com. And it's just the way it sounds. But I'm told by Google that most people just find me by just Googling John DeSouza. And it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to do. And it's there, and it's important. It's important for people to know what is really going on And that's why I'm going to be working on this for quite a while. Also because a lot of the predictions that I give in the extra dimensionals in the last 20 pages are coming true right now. They're coming true right now. And that's one of the reasons why it's very important for people to see this stuff and find out what's really going on with this.
Wow. John, thanks so much for coming on the record, folks. That's all the time we have for fantastic romp here. You can get the book. You can just Google John's name. We'll have it right here on the bottom of your screen. I highly recommend it. It's again, I don't agree with everything in the book, but that's okay. That's why we're all researching and looking and trying to warn of the coming Great Deception. I will be in June 9th. I will be in Missouri. Looking forward to that. That's going to be a great conference. Hope to see you there. You can go and sign up for it. And I hope you do sign up for it. We also, of course, have our crop circle video, which is now available, lamarzulli.net. lamarzulli.net. You can check that out. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and we will see you tomorrow with another Questions with LA. Thanks for watching.